everyone. Welcome back to the third episode of ProInsight, which is a series by the Teen Tribune to talk about career literacy and all the different avenues that you can explore after college and in your career and professional life. So today with us, we have a very exciting guest, and I'm going to pass it over to Harini to introduce her.
Sure. So, Meghana, first of all, today's Self Love Sunday, so welcome. And a little intro on you to our audience members. So, Meghna is an entrepreneur and the founder of Dream a Dozen, an online bakery with an all women kitchen in Bangalore. And she has the dream of expanding across the world one day. She's a cheerleader for all the business people, especially business women, and she hopes that she can learn a little something from everyone. And she is also a pioneer, and she was officially featured on the page of Official Humans of Bombay. And she also writes a very interesting blog series that is amazing. And yeah, let's get started with our founder and entrepreneur, Meghna Jain.
Thank you, guys. This is so sweet. Thank you for having me. I think we had a little chat before the actual broadcast started, and I'm so fascinated by what you're doing. I think I will have to interview you post this.
Yeah, definitely would love that. Just before we get started with the questions officially, I'd like to just encourage our audience who are watching to, ask any questions that you may have for Meghna in the chat or the live stream option on YouTube, so that we can keep it interactive and get your questions answered as the live is going on. And let's get started with Pro Insight by the Team Tribune, episode 3.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think Meghna, the first question I think everyone would want to know is if you could, take us through a day into your life as a, founder and entrepreneur, and what you do usually as a professional. A quick walk through your day.
Harini, I think the reason why people choose to be entrepreneurs is because they know that no day will be the same ever.
Yeah.
You're always facing different problems at work every day, different challenges. There'll be the same half an hour where you had a horrible experience, and within 20 minutes you have, your biggest client sign a deal with you, and you just have to go through that emotional roller coaster that entrepreneurship brings. um, Typically, when I had started, the day always began with baking, ended with baking, and somewhere in the middle I'd take care of the rest of the ops and deliveries and procurement. Now that we've had a larger team, we've grown in the past, I don't take care of the kitchen that much anymore. I'm not actually, a lot of people think that because I'm an entrepreneur who started a baking venture, I bake all the cakes every day, but that isn't true. It's been a while since I've actually baked anything. So I've left it to people who are better trained than I am. So we have pastry chefs and people from a hospitality background. So they take care of the kitchen, I take care of the business. That's how we've divided it. I often tell them that you take care of the supply, I'll take care of the demand. And so a lot of business development, a lot of speaking to clients, a lot of collecting payments. So that's a horrible part of being in business, reminding people to pay, a lot of stuff that you don't really want to do, legal stuff, government stuff. I'm just going to categorize it as stuff and not bore you guys. But yeah, there is no typical day in any business person's life. It's just a blur every day.
So, because now you've come quite a long way from baking itself, can you tell us maybe a little bit about that journey? Like, what sparked the baking journey, and how did that become into a business?
Yeah, sure. So, a story I often recite is one of college. So, what happened was, I had taken a class in school, a baking class in school. I started baking, I started enjoying it. It was the first time where I actually felt that I was good at something. Um, typically in our schools in India, you have like a few streams that you can potentially be good at. You can be good at, academics or dancing or singing or theater. And if you don't fit into any of those buckets, you feel like you're not actually good at anything at all. And so that's what happened to me until I found a baking class. And it was simply because I like to eat. There was really no other reason that I joined it. And so things started falling in place. And so when I joined college, um, someone asked if I could sell a box for her brother's birthday, and eventually she became part of the team. And then I started taking it to class. I said, okay, we will sell this, and I put it on the WhatsApp group. I was like, does anybody want to buy? And I was surprised. There were about 70 people in the class. We got orders for about 90 cupcakes, and just baked overnight. Took it. Put everything, all the cupcakes under the desk and all the frosting. And in break, I was doing the frosting and passing it over. And that happened a couple of times until one of my teachers found out, and she was like, "What on earth is going on here?" And so they said it's not allowed. Which was of course valid. It's a classroom at the end of the day. But then some of my classmates stood up and they said, why not? A lot of people are doing entrepreneurial things in college, and you should encourage this. And so another more encouraging professor connected me to the cafeteria, and so we started supplying to the cafeteria. And then people could legitimately buy from there and didn't have to be under the table. And so yeah, that's how it started.
Right. And how did you know how to how did you move towards scaling it up into a business?
So, what I started in college was called the Cupcake Booth. And of course, it was a side hustle because college was our full time. I always wanted to get into the industry and learn a little bit because my degree is not from hospitality or the culinary field. And so I worked at a food tech startup post that, and I was working full time for about a year and a half, and I got training at another bakery for about 3 months. After which I said, okay, let's do this full time. And contrary to a lot of people who actually bake from home, they keep it as a side hustle. Their full time is mostly something else. They're either afraid to take a leap or just not interested, and that's fine. Like some people just want to keep it as a passion project or as a hobby business, and that's fine too. But I was very clear that this is not something that I'm just doing to pass time. This is something that if I choose to do it full time, it has to be a business that is not a one person army. It has to be a team, and eventually it has to be around the world. Now, how we will get it around the world, I don't have all the answers yet, but I do know that I have at least 4 decades of my working life left to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think just that vision is always the first and the biggest step also sometimes.
Yeah, that'll help you find answers later.
Definitely.
Meghna, you mentioned that you don't have a degree in hospitality or in the food field per se. So how
Yes.
did you sort of educate yourself about these technologies that you do use in operations and managing that, and strike a balance between using the most expensive ones and the best ones, and also keeping a eye on the amount of money you're spending on that. How did you learn that? And yeah, could you help us with that?
I think there's no right answer, especially when you don't come from that background or your family is also not from that background. When you're a first time entrepreneur doing this, sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes you try to ask other people. So I have this habit where anybody I find interesting or intriguing, I don't feel afraid to reach out and say, hey, can you help? And most of the times you will find that people are ready to help. And that may be because we're younger, they don't see us as competition. That may just be because somebody helped them at some point in their life and they want to pay it forward. But people, so right after I quit my job, I took a month, and every day I reached out to somebody from the industry. whether it was a chef, whether it was an entrepreneur. It didn't even have to be somebody from the F&B industry. I just kept writing to people, and I did get a lot of positive responses where I went and met every day. I would meet a new person or speak to a new person on call, and that helped me take decisions about whether I wanted to be a pastry chef or whether I wanted to be an entrepreneur running a baking business. And so every time I feel stuck, I feel like there are people who know more than me. There are experts in this field, and so I just reach out and I ask for help. There are other ways to build your own skill set. Of course, you can take classes, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts or be a part of a community like you guys are having. There are a lot of ways to feel inspired. Um, but you just have to try, and sometimes you'll burn your fingers. Sometimes you'll invest a lot of money into something that was just useless and gets spoiled in 10 days. But it's okay. Like, if you're not successful in that, at least you learned something. It's just the cost of learning.
Definitely. And because you spoke about how we're young and we don't face competition, now that you have gotten a little bit of experience in the industry, how do you kind of keep up with competition and update your own uh, products, etc.?
So now that we are a team of about 15 people, it isn't the same as how it was when I started alone. I can afford to a certain extent to hire experts. So now, for example, our head of operations, she comes from Taj. And she's had 3 to 4 years of experience at Taj. And so that's very valuable because she's worked at an institution that is more than 100 years old. She knows the processes, and so she comes from a place where she knows how to scale things. Now I don't have that expertise, but you have to acknowledge that your team needs to be smarter than you to really progress together. Similarly, some of our pastry chefs come with a diploma in pastry from schools like Whitecaps. If you guys know, Whitecaps is similar to Le Bon. And so those girls, they have education in this, and so their knowledge is a lot better. So wherever, eventually after a few years, when you can start affording to hire help, you should not think that I can do everything myself. To a certain extent it's good to know, but it's not wise to make yourself an expert. For example, if I was to buy a DSLR tomorrow and start learning photography versus paying someone who's an expert photographer, I think the latter would be a much better idea because there is a value to my time also. So if I say invest in learning photography, I may not be able to invest in learning finance, or I may not be able to invest in learning how to run ads on social media. So there are experts for everything, and you should work as much as possible with experts. And basically, as an entrepreneur, you're a person who brings everything together. You're not the person who's doing everything yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think that's a very valuable skill also to learn young, because when you're young, you kind of want everything to be in a certain way. And you automatically assume that you would be the best person to do it that way.
Yeah. That
Um,
is the first instinct. Even now, that is the first instinct. And then I have to like hold myself back and be like, sit down. Somebody else will do it.
And
yeah,
I
So
think it
yeah,
takes a lot of, you have to put that ego down to
yeah,
allow yourself to, allow someone else to help you and not
yeah.
always be the one that I can do everything, I will handle it. That mentality sometimes does
Something
get in the way.
as simple as you're saying that um last year Diwali, I'm talking about 2020 Diwali.
Mm-hmm.
Diwali, Christmas, those times are very, very busy seasons for us. And so I was down helping to unload the truck, load the truck, get all the ingredients, everything. I was doing all of that myself with, of course, help with from other people. And now that our ops manager has joined us, um, this year Diwali, I was like, my first instinct is to go down when the truck comes. And so she's like, sit down, it's happening. And so, but I'm still looking from the window to make sure everything's coming out. And but what can go wrong in that? All they have to do is take it out of the truck. But you have to understand that letting go is important to scale.
Definitely. And as an entrepreneur itself, like, what would you say is the value of being an entrepreneur when you do scale?
The value of being an entrepreneur. I mean, in what sense do you mean? Like, do you money wise?
No, in the sense, as a career, why would you encourage entrepreneurship?
Oh, I would encourage entrepreneurship. Like, like I could speak an hour about that. um, Look, the thing is, when you get to around my age, right, 25, 26, you realize that a lot of smart people, our own peers, they're all going abroad and they're contributing to other economies. And the only way that eventually those smart career options can be created here is if we create them ourselves. The smart brains have to stay in our own country, and that will not just bring in a lot of wealth for yourself, because as an entrepreneur, even if you look at, of course risk is very large, but even if you look at a corporate job versus entrepreneurship, right, there's no upper limit in entrepreneurship. Even if you just compare money, just plain money, right? um, Corporate job, you'll get a hike like what, 10, 15%, 20% every year. You will keep getting a hike. But if you do well in whatever business you choose to do, you could like double revenues every year. There is no upper limit to how well you can do. And 2021 was a landmark year for startups with the number of unicorns that were born. If you guys know what unicorns mean,
Yeah.
right? um, and so there's so much scope in our economy now, and so little risk also in our generation. And I would say so little because we come from families where we don't really have to worry anymore about who's going to serve the next meal, right? We know that there's a roof on our head, and the worst that can happen is that we fail and we lose some money, and we'll still be employable enough to start a job. And so it's just not worth it if you don't work as hard as you can with everything that you've been given, everything that we've all been blessed with. If you just laze around.
Definitely. And I think that's I think maybe entrepreneurship is something in small measure that everyone should maybe try also, at least
Yeah.
once in their life.
I think now it's happening a lot more than any time else. Every time I see like a young person's Instagram page, I also see that they have a little business page, whether they're selling soaps or they're selling, some
Candles.
illustrations or candles, or like it's really small businesses from home, but that's where it starts. And that's amazing. I think the Instagram and social media has enabled that, which is brilliant.
Yeah. And before we move on, there was one particular thing which you said, our smart brain should stay in our country. I feel like that should go up on a t-shirt. Like that is so true.
One day when I have merchandise.
And also, since we're on the page of entrepreneurship, a lot of our audience members they asked, why an all-women kitchen, and what is, the give us a sneak peek behind the world of startups, and what is your perspective on that?
Okay, so I think you spoke about two different points. The all women kitchen is not related to startups, but more to the F&B industry. What happens in commercial kitchens, sadly, the statistics that we don't realize is that 97% of the chefs that are in commercial kitchens are male.
Hmm.
Right? So what does that mean? That means you go to a five-star hotel, and if there are 50 chefs, then maybe two will be female, right? Or one will be female. And so that one female doesn't even feel comfortable working there just because of how minority of a representation she has. Um, in comparison, I believe UK is 17%, still a very poor statistic, but at least a little higher than India. And it is an irony because typically in India, women are the ones in the kitchen, but not in commercial kitchens. And there are multiple reasons for that: the work culture, the timings, the physical nature of the work. F&B is not an easy industry at all. It's a very, very difficult, physically strenuous industry. And what I wanted to do was create a space where girls can really express their creativity, they feel safe, and because there are ample amount of opportunities for the latter, but not enough for the women. And so that's what I wanted to do. So today, if we're a kitchen of 10 girls, tomorrow we can be a kitchen of 100 girls or 1,000 girls, and that's when we will start changing the statistics.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very inspiring also. Just kind of making a dent in your own, like as you
Industry.
said, keep the brains in your own country, and
Yeah.
you see that that's how you change things. So definitely. Harini, do you have any questions from the audience before we continue with
Yeah,
the one?
1 second. I will just check our live stream chat. um, yeah, so common question is, how do you deal with failures? As a young entrepreneur, I'm sure you would have had your own experience with that. So yeah, would you like to, share some anecdotes or some experiences?
Um, there's failure every day, and you need to be balanced enough. Like you asked me that about a day in our life, right? And I said that within half an hour you can have an extreme peak and an extreme failure, and you just have to be really thick skinned, I guess. There's really no other way to put it. So what happens, for example, if I take the function of sales, um, when you when you're in sales and when you're reaching out to people, initially nobody knows you, right? And so you just reach out, and it's like a shot in the dark, and you have no idea if anybody's listening to you. And it's very similar to, say, finding a job. You just write mails, and you have no idea if people are looking at your resume, if something's wrong with your resume or your college or your degree. Similarly, we have no idea if something's wrong with our proposal or our prices or our products, but we're just reaching out. And so, for example, in 2020 Diwali, right, I took 3 days and I did nothing else but write to about 1,500 people on LinkedIn. I just sent, and eventually, you will have like maybe uh, half of them accept your connection request, or less than half, 40% accept your connection request. You'll have even lesser replying back to you, even lesser giving their email ID, and even lesser finally making a sale. So I wrote to 1,500 people, and out of that, two people bought, two clients bought, right? But when I say two clients bought, that was, of course, I can't give away my revenue numbers, but it made up at least 40% of my entire Diwali sale,
Oh,
right? Because that one client bought so many numbers.
mm-hmm.
It was our biggest order till that date. So you never know what will stick, but you just have to keep trying. And so I can consider the rest 1,498 as failures. I can consider that they didn't work out. But you never know when any of them will get back. Some of them didn't get back for Diwali, but they got back for Christmas, or when they have a requirement. You never know, so you have to keep trying. And that's irrespective of whether, again, you're trying for a job or you're trying for sales. I think the fear of rejection, I say this very often, the fear of rejection is so scary to just pick up the phone and ask someone for something. And if you're able to get over that, then you can achieve many, many things in life.
Yeah, definitely. I think fear of rejection is something that underlines a lot of things in life,
Yeah,
not just in business, even when you're applying, as you said, for jobs, colleges, etc.
yeah, yeah.
But because
That's
you,
yeah. Sorry.
sorry, Harini, do you want?
No, you go ahead. I will continue later. Sorry.
Okay, so I was just quite fascinated with this idea about how you reached out to so many people on LinkedIn. But what does the idea generation process look like as an entrepreneur? Is it something that solely comes from your end, or uh, yeah, like how do you keep being creative?
How do you
With,
break the monotonous
yeah,
pattern thing, right? Yeah.
So initially, the business was just me, right? In this, like in a very literal sense, also everything that I liked, everything that I believed in, became the business. But when you think of a brand, it's important to think of a brand like a personality, like another person. And so you need to give that person certain characters, traits. Um, from an outer perspective, from a design perspective, you give those by assigning, say, brand colors or brand fonts or brand visual style. So, like a designer can tell you more about that in detail. And then you go into what it really means to be that brand. So, people don't say go to Starbucks for the coffee. People go to Starbucks because it's a place where they can hang out. Nobody will tell them anything if they use their free Wi-Fi for 5 hours. That's what they're selling, right? That's the experience that they're selling. That nobody say Nike sells the emotion, the sentiment, that you can do anything that you want to do. Right. And so very similarly, Dream a Dozen initially was okay, I like pink things, I like chocolatey things. And so that's what we were selling, colorful things. Those are things that I personally like. But um, after some time, one human being can only have so many ideas. And they can only scroll through Pinterest for so long for more ideas, right? And so that's where there are two ways you can generate ideas. One is you can use user generated content, which means you bring together a community either on your Instagram or anywhere else. We use Instagram very actively, where we actually ask people for ideas. We have a community called Desert Circle, and we have about 100 of our top customers there. We keep doing tastings for them. We do contests for them. We keep them really, really engaged, and every time we need ideas from them, they're more than happy and bubbling to, like, give us some ideas that they might have. So that's one avenue. Another avenue is, of course, our own team. Like I said, we have pastry chefs who are educated and have come from great schools, and so they bring in their ideas, and they know a lot of operations to make those ideas successful. And so I think it's important to keep taking inspiration from different places and not think that your own brain is one and only.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's similar to what you said initially about keeping the ego aside,
Yeah.
and right. Uh,
Yeah, and now that we're here, what do you think you would project, for the year 2022, and also in general your future goals for yourself as an entrepreneur as well as for Dream a Dozen?
Look, anytime I have projected anything in the last 3 years, there's been another lockdown. So I'm just tired of projecting.
all of us, though.
I'm just tired of forecasting. I was very pumped about opening new kitchens, and we had this idea for a cupcake experience center in even the office that I'm sitting out of right now. It was supposed to be a retail outlet, and so a lot of things didn't go the way they were supposed to because of the multiple waves that have now come our way. God willing, this will be the last, but you can never say. And that's why I'm not saying anything out loud about 2022. But like I said in the beginning of this call, the dream is to be around the world, and that's what we're working towards.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, we
awesome.
don't want to jinx it, but then we also have it in our vision board, which it's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, go ahead, Raisha.
okay, so because we as we're wrapping up, etc. Um, just wondering, because our main audience is teenagers, what would you say to your 17-year-old self when you were starting out?
I would say that it's okay if it seems like you're not good at anything, because you'll figure out what you're good at eventually, and you just have to keep trying and it'll be okay. I think now as a person, I just have more confidence and more faith that everything will be okay than I had when I was younger.
Hmm.
And so if you live life with the faith that I may not know the answers, but I'll get there, then everything just gets a lot easier.
Yeah, and things eventually work themselves out,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and we have a couple of audience questions that we collected them before the call. So,
Mhm.
are you ready? It's sort of like a a bunch of questions. So if you're not,
Rapid fire of
yeah,
sorts.
Is it? Okay.
So who's your dream collab? Who would you like to collaborate with?
Collaborate with. I would like to make a cake for Hrithik Roshan.
Oh, wow. What cake?
I don't know if that's a collaboration. If he pays me for it, I'm fine. I just want to make a cake for him.
I think they meant more like a chef, but I mean, Hrithik Roshan sounds better.
Yeah, I think that sounds better, honestly.
Yeah, and then what are the three green flags that you would suggest to a aspiring entrepreneur, and three red flags? They're basically like things
About
that you should like
entrepreneurship.
look out for, in a business, maybe with people or with the trajectory of your business. So they're called red flags for the negative ones and green lights for the positive ones.
Okay. So, green flags for the business for people. What do
People
you?
who are
About,
aspiring to,
for,
be an entrepreneur, like your like words of wisdom for them. Look out for
Okay.
these, but be aware of these as well. That sort of
Okay.
a pan. Yeah.
So, okay. I think green flags. People should really feel very strongly about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times people just do it like a plan B, and they have many plans C, D, E, F, G after that also. And I'm not that kind of person. I'm an all in or all out type of
Go all in.
person, and
Yeah.
so I like people like that, and so I think that people should be like that. But I mean, of course, to each his own. Um, I think that people should also be honest in their business. I think honesty is underrated, because business has this horrible name that if you're a businessman or a businesswoman, then you're probably like, eating bribes and, doing stuff under the table. And that's what it involves. But that's not necessary. And you should definitely watch out for people who think like that and not have them part of their team. So I suppose that's a red flag. Um, and anybody, I think one thing that's very important, especially while building your team, is that it's okay if somebody doesn't have the skill set as long as they have the attitude. The attitude is a lot more important than technical skill.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, that I suppose, again, that's a green flag and a red flag.
It depends on which.
I'm not sure how I answered that question.
No, again,
I think you did a good job.
yeah, and it
Thanks.
makes it more unique, with your perspective. So it's not a standardized answer, but it always brings out something that we've never heard before. So it was really good.
Thanks.
And another question is, who is your idol? Who do you look up to, or who was it? Is it the same person? Did it change?
Is it a big question?
I do love Hrithik Roshan.
Same, yeah.
But then, of course, Hrithik Roshan is not a business person. And so, from an entrepreneurship perspective, my grandmother was a very inspiring person. She ran a business for about 40 years. We are from Jaipur, so she ran a garment business. And she also raised 4 kids while she was doing that. And she went around the country selling her stuff. And I wouldn't say while growing up, I really aspired to be like her because I just didn't understand it. I was just too young. But only after she passed is now when people say what she did and her stories and the stories of her business. That's all very fascinating. I've written a blog about her, like a little tribute after she passed. And I often go back and read my own blog.
You all do.
Because
Yeah.
it's just a fond memory of her. So yeah, she was very inspiring. I think Laurie Grenier from Shark Tank. I really look up to her.
I love her. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like a boss woman. And recently I found Sarah
Like,
Blakely.
yeah,
Or
Spanx, right?
yeah,
The
yeah,
first
she's
billionaire.
amazing. Oh my god.
Yeah, I
People
follow
should
her.
definitely go check her out. So yeah, these are women, but of course there are other people. I really look up to Howard Schultz from Starbucks. I follow a lot of food entrepreneurs. So yeah, any entrepreneur, man, any entrepreneur.
Yeah, and your grandma is, I mean, definitely, a real life example of a Wonder Woman, because what she did is pretty amazing. That's not very
Yeah,
commonly
in
seen.
this day and age, it's easier, but 40 years ago, it was not. Or rather, I think that's 50 years ago. But yeah.
True.
Yeah, definitely. I think it definitely must be in the genes itself then.
I don't know about genes. A lot of people, they say that someone will say, "Oh, you're so talented," but what's talent? Like the harder you work, the more talented you get. Nobody's born with talent.
Definitely. I think it's a good reminder that you don't have to be born with it,
Yeah,
or born with something. You can cultivate skill.
yeah. I don't believe that anybody's born with anything really. Yeah.
That's true. The last question, why Dream a Dozen? What's the name and what's the story behind the name? Because it's amazing.
Oh,
But
so
yeah.
many people ask me this, but I wish I had a fancy story. I really don't have any fancy story at all. So the previous name of my first business in college was called the Cupcake Booth, and I didn't want to continue that name because I didn't want the name of a product to be in the name of the business.
Mhm.
Um, and the reason was at that time I was applying to Dunkin' Donuts for a job, and they were actually downsizing and not doing that well. And I realized that Dunkin' Donuts can never not sell donuts because it's in their name, and so they can never pivot to some other product. And I wanted to make sure that it's a kind of generic name. I do believe in the power of dreams. I do believe that if you have a vision, then you can achieve it. And so this was a little alliteration, and it was available. A trademark was available, so I just went for it.
It's beautiful, and the aesthetic of it is again something I really like.
Very sweet, thank you.
I think it is a fancy name with the realization of Dunkin' Donuts and stuff. I don't think you should sell yourself short on the story.
Thanks.
Um,
Yeah, I probably learned to say it better. But you know how like people have like this eureka moment for the name. I really thought about it for like 6 weeks. We went through hundreds of names to a point where I didn't even tell my parents. I was like, I'm choosing one and need to do to achieve greatness. And if you don't want to do something that big and you want to stay small and be like a hobby business, that's fine too. But just like figure out what makes you happy.
yeah, definitely. I think that's where visualizing and coming up with like a 5-year plan, some of sorts, really helps a
I
lot.
don't have a 5-year plan. I wish
Especially
I
with the
did.
lockdowns, you don't really need it.
I'm
Yeah,
not a planner, but it worked out, so it's fine.
Definitely. No, but I think like even just as you said, like you want to go global. That's your end goal, or at least for now.
Yeah,
So that even that is in a way a plan, right?
yeah, it's a 40-year plan.
No.
it'll
um,
be, I mean, less than 40 years for sure. Yeah.
God willing, man. You guys have been very sweet.
yeah, thank you so much, Meena, for joining us today,
Thank
and
you.
speaking to everyone who's wanting to get into entrepreneurship or a baking business or just in general has questions about what career lines they can get into. I'm sure you've been a big inspiration to them all. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Laisha. Thank you, Harini. You guys have been very professional about it. I'm very surprised about your age and very in awe of what you're doing at that age. If anybody does want to reach out, they can feel free to do that. I run a session called Pay It Forward every Sunday, and I actually speak to entrepreneurs. I have one call that's at 6 o'clock now. And anybody who wants to get into business or is already doing business, or any kind of business, it can be baking. I've spoken to photographers, I've spoken to crafters, and it is something I just do to do it. I don't charge for it. I don't do anything. I just do it because it gives me a lot of satisfaction to be able to add value to someone else's life, even if it's for an hour every week. So please feel free to reach out. You can just DM me. My You guys can put my handle in the description or something like that, and I'll be more than happy to help.
Definitely, I
Sure.
think
Yeah.
that's great. I think this call was a way to pay it forward, I suppose. But we'll definitely link you and make sure people can find you if
Thank
they have
you.
questions.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
for
much.
your time. I know
Thank
you
you.
mentioned that the weekends are especially busier. So we really appreciate the time that you took out
Thank you.
on a Sunday. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. So with that, I think we can wrap up episode 3 of Pro Insight. We'll see you next time with another guest who can have some more career literacy. And until then, stay updated to everyone watching. Please stay updated with our new newspaper issues. We have one coming out today, which is themed on creation. So check that out on our website. And yeah, everyone, please have a great Sunday. And thank you for joining.
Yeah, it's Self Love
Thank
Sunday.
you.
So bye.
Bye.
Yeah, guys.